pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll with planet. Flight downside speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. I am Thomas Burghardt, editor and writer for NASA Spaceflight, and I'm joined by Chris Gebhardt, assistant managing editor for NASA Spaceflight, and Jack Beyer, photographer for NASA Spaceflight. And thank you for tuning in for this week's episode. We've got a whole lot of stuff to talk about. Starship SN6 has made its first hop test, a completely successful flight there. Rocket Lab has debuted their first ever Photon satellite. We'll talk more on that. There's been a couple launches, a couple tests, lots of stuff to talk about. So during the show, when you've tuned in, thank you for coming. In chat, go ahead and tag us at NASA Spaceflight for any questions about any of those topics, anything else you want to talk about. This week's episode, we're really just going to talk about generally some of the stuff that's happened, answer a lot of questions, and basically just hang out and talk space stuff. So please ask questions during the course of the show, and we will try to answer as many as we can. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing absolutely well. How are you, Thomas, my brother from a couple miles up the road?
Yes, I'm doing well. And Jack, how you doing over there?
No complaints. Back in LA finally. Really pleased to be. So all is right in the world.
Yeah, Jack was recently not home in LA. Where were you the last couple days?
Well, it was like over a week. Well, first we went to Boca Chica, and then the hop was delayed for 2 days because we think wind. So we decided to drive around a little bit, perhaps excessively, and saw some nature, got a little bit of petrified forest action, and then we turned around and went back to Texas. And then, caught the hop. I was very lucky. Just want to say thanks again to Space Pod Reality and Rachel for accommodating my girlfriend and I out there. It was one heck of a trip. And I mean, wow, to see SN6 hop. And then we drove back, like a 24-hour drive. If you don't account for stops, gas, sanity, oh, look at that cool thing over there, that sort of thing. So I think all told, it's probably more like a 30-something hour drive. But yeah, we left Boca Chica after the hop. Like we shot the hop, and then we went and got lunch, and then Lauren and I basically just left. So that was probably around 1 or 2 p.m. on Thursday. And we got back last night at like midnight into LA. So
Wow.
that was a drive, but it was fun, and we really like it. But I think all told, it was like something like 6,500 something miles. It's insane.
That's crazy. So thank you for going out there, because we got some amazing photos and videos of the hop. So let's start. I guess that's just talking about that. That's one of the biggest news items of the week. This is the second time that a full-scale Starship has done, or a full-scale Starship prototype vehicle, tank section, has done its hop test. We had SN5 do their hop a couple weeks ago, and now SN6 has done the same. But it's the same flight profile. They did the same test with 2 different vehicles, because I guess they're trying to make the launch process smoother and kind of get into the rhythm of how these vehicles operate and stuff. Chris, what does this look like, do you think, in like the grand scheme of Starship testing?
I think everyone, including Elon himself, is surprised that they have worked as well as they have. In a test campaign like this, you have so many things that you're dealing with. I mean, not the least of which being the huge methane raptor engine, right? That is still very, very new, and that they're pushing the boundaries of it. And just to have these first 2 hops go incredibly well, and even better than Starhopper's, because Starhopper had some fluctuations and some things in its campaign. But I think this so far is proving out to be very, very good news for SpaceX in the overall test campaign, especially since we got some word on the Super Heavy booster, and potentially what some of their timelines are for building that and getting it to its first hop. So, we were talking a few weeks ago, Jack, I don't know if you remember this, but we were talking a few weeks ago on another stream, and we were talking about what do we think the timelines are in testing? And we were saying so much of it depended on how the SN5 hop went and if it was successful and what they saw in it. And I don't know about you, but I I was not expecting both of them to go as smoothly as they did. In fact, like when SN5 hopped, I screamed so loud when it left the launch pad, like I scared the dog. You know, that was in the room.
Yeah, I'm pretty astonished. I mean, I think I was pretty confident that they would be able to launch 5 and 6 and handle them in the air fairly well. I mean, SpaceX at this point, I don't know that. I mean, I don't know anything. Put that on the table, but I don't know that anybody knows how to control a large stick in the air better than SpaceX at this point. I mean, look at what they can do with Falcon 9 as it re-enters, and you know, comes back to landing site or drone ship. So obviously, this is a much different problem than Falcon 9, but point being, they have expertise in controlling rockets and controlling rockets in proximity to the ground. So I don't think I was really quite as worried about the launch, even with the power slide. How cool does that look? But specifically the landing, that's always where I get nervous. And with this hop, it was exactly the same. Where from our vantage point, the wind was blowing towards us. So you can see in Mary's video that all the smoke luckily gets blown away from the landing pad. You can see that thing in the air a huge chunk of the time. Whereas from our vantage point, it basically hit apogee and then descended into a smoke cloud, similar to how Mary's angle for SN5 was. And you know, once it goes into that smoke cloud, you're kind of just like, come on, don't. And then once you hear the double vent as it's touchdown and then starts to the safing process, once you hear that, like the like, I don't know, but yeah, once you hear that, it's a huge relief because you know it's touchdown. And then there's a couple seconds where you're like, please don't be tipping over slowly. Please don't be tipping over slowly. And then, yeah. So the landing, that's always where I get nervous with these campaigns. And you can even see SN6 there in the shot that we're looking at right now is leaning considerably, but nominal. It just didn't tip over, so everything's fine. And this isn't even the final leg design. This isn't even my final form. So it's not even a problem that it's leaning because this isn't even a leg design indicative of the final outcome. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer to your question of, I guess I was always confident that they would launch fine, but the landings, man, that's where I get scared. And so I'm glad that that SN6 and 5 both stuck the landing, because not only does that mean they can progress rapidly to SN8, which I bet we'll see really, really soon here, but it also means that they don't have to fix anything at the launch site. They didn't break anything. They didn't burn anything. They didn't have any debris fly into anything.
Yeah,
So
I
they
did
can
notice that there
immediately-
was way less explosions on the launch mount when this time around, which I think
Yeah,
is
it
good.
seemed like a really clean launch. I mean, Elon even said as much on Twitter. And yeah, I think with 5, it took them 3 attempts on the day. You know, they fired it up, they got to a point, aborted, fired it up, got to a point, aborted, and then on the 3rd attempt, they hopped. 6, man, bam. You know, they were ready to go. I think they might have held a couple times for wind, but it wasn't the case where the vehicle was unhappy at any point. It basically, as soon as they told the vehicle, "Hey, do you want to fly?" It was like, "Yeah, let's go, let's fly," which is awesome.
And yeah, and I think that's the most important takeaway from that for me in terms of how smooth these campaigns are going and what it means for the future of the test campaign is exactly what you just said there. It was the weather that all visual signs just pointed to it being the weather and not the actual vehicle that was an issue for them on the day of the hop. And I mean, if we're already at that kind of level where you have a prototype vehicle that is operating so well that on the day you go to test it, you're literally just trying to find the hole in the winds to get it off the ground. That's incredible. And that really, really does speak to the maturity of the overall system. And you know, I think too, it says a lot for the methane engine as well. We know SpaceX has been testing them a lot in at McGregor. And I think we really saw a huge element of why, because what really shocked me on this hop was how long it hung in the air at apogee, where they like managed to get that throttle perfectly calibrated to the mass. And that was super impressive because that's a deep throttle on that engine to do that.
Yeah, I love Raptor. I'm so floored on Raptor, and the fact that they're able to fly it multiple times now with 5 and 6 means that they're going to get much more representative data off of these engines than if they were firing them in a test stand. I presume. I'm not a rocket scientist, but that's my inclination, and I think even Elon might have even said as much or something similar on Twitter. But basically, test as you fly. If you have a Raptor in a horizontal position, it has different stresses on the structures than if it was actually in a vertical position, as if it was actually firing. So I'm so excited for Raptor. Jack's excited about something. Surprise, surprise. But no, really, because it's an engine that we can refuel with the basic components that are everywhere throughout the solar system. So that's why that's a big deal. And then also it's super efficient and super high thrust to weight. So it's exciting to see them get repeated excellent data off of this engine from these tests, because I wager that's a good part of what they're trying to nail down with these tests, not just the launch flow and the fueling flow and recycling and all of the GSC side stuff, but also just how does Raptor perform? How does it perform again? How does it perform again? How does it perform if we tweak this variable, et cetera? So I hope that I don't think we ever saw Raptor SN27 come off serial number 5, but I do wonder what kind of inspections it underwent, and I wonder to what extent they pick over everything on these vehicles afterwards and get the data that they want. It's so exciting, and I wonder how many more times we'll see 5 and 6 hop. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, so we've got a couple questions about that, and while you guys were talking, we got a huge queue of questions, so I'll just roll them into the conversation here. But yeah, so we've seen both SN5 and SN6 complete hop tests now, both to 150 meters. So a lot of questions about what the next step is, and I believe we've actually got kind of 2 things in the near future. We've got an SN 7.1 test tank, which we believe that should be the next thing we see move to the launch site. But that won't have
with
a
the
Raptor
new
or
aluminum,
anything.
right? That's the new.
No,
That's
it's not
the
been
steel, right?
The new
not
stainless
aluminum,
steel.
Yes.
Yeah, it should be 304L or whatever the new one is. Yeah. And that one, I think we're expecting they're just gonna do a test to failure at some point, maybe a couple tests and ending in the test to failure, to kind of get more pressure data and stuff like that. But then also, I think we're expecting Starship SN5 to go back to the launch site because Elon has said they actually are going to fly these prototypes a couple of times. And again, the point of that is to smooth out the launch flow and things like that. So the next one to fly, because unless SN 7.1 fails in spectacular fashion and gets some air, which could happen, I guess. But the one we're expecting to fly intentionally is SN5 again, probably, and they'll probably just rotate SN5 and SN6 for a couple flights each.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
That's what I'm really dying to know is, does SN5 fly 1 more time? Does it fly 2 more times, 3 more times?
I don't know how much, because eventually you got to get to SN8. So
yeah, and to even work at the pad, on the orbital launch mount, to even work over there, they can't do it when they're doing these sorts of test campaigns. So it's interesting that they decided to spend more time on the 150-meter hops and get more data in that sort of phase of these tests. And I wonder how long they're going to choose to spend there, especially since 6 went so smoothly.
Well, and I wonder too if this points to a. Sorry, I want to rephrase that. I in the form of a question, because I like Jeopardy. I wonder how much of this focus on the 150-meter hops is because of the long duration firings that we've seen of the Raptor engines at McGregor. If they have good enough confidence in the long haul, sustained thrust profile phases of flight that the Raptors will primarily be in. So what they're really trying to gather the most data from, and that's the most useful to them right now, is just the actual liftoff parameters of it, and then the landing parameters of it. And maybe that's why we've seen a shift into something that I know we were kind of hoping that SN5 and SN6 would fly again, but I think hearing Elon say it and kind of getting that insight into, we're not done with this test campaign, that's very interesting. I'm just wondering how much of it is you can only gather this type of data at liftoff and landing, so why not do it as many times as we can afford?
And there's also,
I don't know anything about rocket engines, but sorry, I'm a bull in a china shop over here. I apologize. I don't know anything about rocket engines, but I do wonder, maybe this is a better answer for you, Thomas. Oh my God, what is the most stressful part of flight or operation for a rocket engine? Is that startup and shutdown, or is that throttling, or is it the steady state at full power? Because that could go into what you're saying, Chris.
Right. So for the engine specifically, I think most of the stresses come when you're changing the throttle levels. So startup, shutdown, and then throttling. When you're at steady state, things tend to not change too much. That's kind of the
Copy.
idea. So that's for the engine specifically. Obviously, it's different though for the vehicle overall when you're testing the tank, the stresses that the tanks undergo, and things like that. That'll happen when you're at peak acceleration. So
Yeah.
on the way up, at some point you're under some peak acceleration before you throttle down to start slowing down, um, and same on the way down. So
And I
it
believe,
depends on what
and
aspect you're looking at.
yeah, and I believe that, and I'm just basing this by the internal camera images that we get from SpaceX of these things flying. You know, the Merlins are really contained within that optoweb. They're really, really protected from the stresses of landing, especially as that flame and debris and everything gets sucked back into the engine well, right, and the skirt area. So I'm wondering if Raptor's startup and shutdown sequences, especially on Starship, for the upper stage of Starship for landing, is just such a more chaotic environment because it's not enclosed right now, that might be something they're also gathering data on in terms of how the Raptors perform in terms of being able to turn around very quickly since they're exposed as Starship comes down to land.
Sure, and that's another key point to draw a parallel between turning around these Starship test vehicles and turning around, say, a Falcon 9 booster. Um, the Starship vehicles aren't experiencing reentry; they're only flying for a minute or so at a time. Um, so, and all and not experiencing nearly the strong aerodynamic forces that you do when you're trying to go to orbit. So as far as much as it's important to turn these vehicles around and fly them over and over again, it's a way different situation than like reducing turnaround on Falcon 9 boosters that are going to orbit, because that's a whole another level of refurbishment and stuff you have to do. Versus these, you have to inspect them after flight, but I would venture to guess that there isn't much that needs to be like replaced or anything
Yeah,
between Starship hops. I don't know if you guys agree with
just the
that.
feet, right? That's probably it. Just the feet.
Yeah,
If
Mhm.
maybe slap some more TPS tiles on the side if anything fell off or cracked,
sure,
because and that's not something you need to do, but that's stuff they're
right,
testing, right? So,
yeah.
but in
Right.
terms of stuff that they would replace, yeah, I think that's probably about it. Maybe
Yeah.
on SN5's Raptor on 27, they would replace like a hose or whatever if something got a little
Mhm.
fried or you know. But yeah, it doesn't seem like there would need to be much, Thomas. I think you're right. Um,
Well,
yeah, and I'll
and you
just I'll
know,
just get a stamp on my Elon bingo card real quick. Orders of magnitude different, different velocity with an
Yeah,
orbital vehicle versus a hopping vehicle. So yeah, it's a completely different
right.
ball game there. You're right.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that you were saying there, Thomas, that sort of clicked in my mind there is that some of the inspections that we might be seeing on these very, very early prototypes as well are probably designed to find the places on the vehicle that have to be replaced under the current design
mhm.
and switch them to not be replaced. Because if these are supposed to be like airplanes one day, I mean, and essentially once we launch the one for the human lunar lander system, right? I mean, that stays in space from everything that we know. It doesn't come back
Yep.
for refurbishment and relaunch.
Right.
So
It goes between
you
the lunar surface and gateway over and over again, but it doesn't enter
right.
atmospheres over and over again. Yeah.
Exactly. So like that's another thing they might really be looking at in these early designs is what did we need to replace on this one so we don't have to do that again?
Oh wow, I didn't consider that at all in terms like these 150-meter hops in terms of the the lunar lander concept and potential contracts there. I mean, do you want to learn how to divert your vehicle away from a boulder field, Neil Armstrong
Hmm.
style, last minute with very little
Uh-huh.
fuel left in your engines? Maybe do a bunch of 150-meter hops and see how the vehicle performs when you tilt it like
Sure.
this really quickly or what have you. So, yeah, that's really interesting,
And
Chris. Good call.
and hey, you know, we know there's synergy between all of Elon's companies and everything. Like we know part of Boring is
Yep.
for Mars exploration and Mars colonization. We know Tesla batteries are in play here. And I can speak as a Tesla owner on this. That navigation system that they got is really good at detecting obstacles. Like when I was coming out of Kennedy the other day from the Starlink launch, they hadn't mowed part of the grass near the road, and the car's radar systems were catching that there was something there, but it couldn't quite figure out what it was. But it was detecting blades of grass.
That's
That's
crazy.
impressive. And we know there's synergy here, so it could that's entirely possible, Jack. Yeah, like
Yeah,
oh,
even
man,
Starlink. I mean, you're gonna need communication satellites on Mars and the Moon for effective communication. Starlink, bam, there you go.
Yep.
Exactly. Oh man, now who really wants to see a Starship landing test where it has to auto detect hazards and fly itself around a landing field?
That'd be cool. Doesn't
That would be
JPL
incredible.
have like a boulder field or something like that? It'd be really cool if they set up like
Maybe.
they could just
do
use
for
all
Mars
their
rovers, yeah.
I'm
they could
pretty
just use
sure
all of their
hasn't Mast
Starship
in Space
scrap.
done something like that? Didn't they one of their
Yep.
flight tests was a big identify hazards and avoid them on the way down?
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, but Mast in Space has been
That's
around
in
for
my head somewhere, yeah.
so long, and they've done so much with vertical takeoff and vertical landing. I mean, I think the rumor, or the legend, or the lore is that Elon saw what Mastin was doing with vertical liftoff and landing, and said, "Screw the parachutes, we're doing that with Falcon 9. If Mastin can do it, we can." I don't know if that's true or apocryphal or what, but that's the story I've heard. So yeah, Mastin does not mess around. I would totally believe that.
Yeah, and I believe, oh boy, I might be misremembering the instrument that they have on there, but I believe they were part of the design team for Perseverance's landing system, because for the first time, Perseverance, as it's coming down, is going to be taking images with its navigation camera and instantly comparing those to what MRO and Mars Express and all the orbiters have mapped of the area. And if it sees something real time that was too small to resolve on from those orbital images of Mars, it can detect those and fly Perseverance away and to another landing site. So this would not surprise me at all. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to go through a couple of super chats really quick. Modi Space Industries, a regular on the show, with a super chat. Thank you so much for your support. And this is a name I'm not even going to try to, Arjokia or something like that. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate the support. Go through some more questions here. Let's see. A question about the mass simulator. Does the mass simulator help with stabilization, or does it make it harder? I believe that part of the mass simulator is to actually move the center of mass so that the offset thrust isn't as big an issue. Is that correct, or did I say that right?
You're the rocket science. You're the aerospace engineer.
You guys don't know? Okay, I'm pretty sure the way I understand is think about it this way. You'll put the mass simulator on top of the vehicle, which moves the center of mass upwards on the rocket. And then as that bottom engine has to gimbal a little bit because it's not in the center of the vehicle to fire through the center of mass, because it's up higher, you don't have to gimbal as much to reach that same center of mass line, if you will.
I'll put it this way.
Except if we sorry, go ahead, Jack.
If you try and balance a broom with the bristle end down on your hand, where that's where all the weight is, then the top of the broom, you're never going to balance a broom on your hand, bristle end down. But I think we've all, if you've been a kid and bored and been told to clean something and you don't want to do it, balance the broom on with the bristle end up in the air and the whatever end in the rod end in your palm. The weight being up high like that, I don't know the math of it. I went to school for cameras, okay? But it makes it easier to balance. It gives you a smaller lever arm, bigger moment arm. I don't know. Thomas, say smart things.
You got it right. The mass being up higher should actually make it more stable than anything else. It's about your yeah.
But I yes to that, but I don't believe it actually changed where the center of mass was for the offset of the thrust of the Raptor, because in the video we're about to see, right on cue from Michael, that Raptor engine is gimbaled quite a bit and is definitely not thrusting through a center of mass on that vehicle. So I
think we might have lost Chris G there for a second. But to finish his thought, yeah, the vehicle does, the engine does gimbal a bit at the beginning, and a fair bit. But I think the center of mass moves upward on the vehicle when you add that mass simulator. So that's part of the factor, and it should make it more stable during flight. It should make it unstable. And Chris is back.
Did I drop?
We lost your feed for like 2 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, you got what I was saying, so I guess the important part cut out.
Let's see some more questions here. So we mentioned Raptor earlier, and I'm gonna bring up an amazing photo that came out from SpaceX yesterday, because we
I
have
love
a
this
question
photo.
about this.
I love this
I
photo.
was wondering, Jack. I was so wondering if you had seen this because I so wanted to know what your reaction was to this photo.
I thought
Yes.
that was an F1. I'm stupid, and
That's
I thought
what.
that
Yeah,
that
I
was an
had
F1.
lots of comments to say that just looks like an F1 engine.
I was just like,
So,
oh, cool. They put a Raptor next to an F1 for size Oh God, it's a Vector. Also,
so for those who
I don't
may
know
not
who
recognize this
coined
photo,
Vector, but it's awesome.
I saw Joe
Oh,
Bernard
yeah,
on Twitter is the first place I saw it. So shout out to
Same.
Joe. But yeah, so what you're looking at, this is a photo that SpaceX tweeted last night. On the left, you're seeing the normal Raptor engine that's been powering the Starship hops and things like that. And the one on the right is a vacuum optimized Raptor engine, the very first one, the first like full scale Raptor vacuum. We've seen like some modified Raptors to start testing vacuum engine things already at McGregor, but this is the first one we're actually seeing the full scale, full bell extension for a vacuum optimized engine, and it's huge. And also someone pointed out that because all the rings on the bell means it's actually regeneratively cooled, the whole bell is, which is something that's interesting.
Yeah, you're
Which
not going to be able
would make
to
total
do
sense.
ablative or any other kind of cooling when
Right.
they're all packed together so close together in the skirt like that. You're going to have to do full regen, which is crazy.
I mean,
We got
makes perfect sense. Use the densified, propellant and oxidizer that you have on board to cool your engine. Makes sense. Yep. Many other vehicles have done that. Yep.
looks like we've got South Padre or Space Padre in the chat. Hey, Space Padre, what's up?
Hey,
Nice.
Space Padre. Let's see. I'm going to bring up some more questions here. All right, more questions about the Starship test campaign. Do you think that SN5 or SN6 will go higher and then do a shut off and relight in flight, or do you think we're going to save that for SN8?
God, that'd be so cool.
God, that would be cool, but I don't know, honestly. I was about to say, oh no, I don't think they would do that, but then I'm like, remember who you're talking about, Chris. I don't know. I mean, it's entirely possible if they can get the data that they need out of 5 and 6, right, for the takeoff landings and everything like that. If you want additional in-flight data to support that you might not lose SN8 and further iterations on that, where you do have to do air shutdown and restart of your engine, it would make sense to test them on prototypes that you've already used to what you needed them for and are not of the same steel design that's going forward. Because if you end up losing them in a prototype Raptor, you haven't actually lost the bigger prototype that means more at that point in the evolutionary stage of this development. So I'm going to put that under the category of possible with how SpaceX tests.
That's fair.
And oh my God, if they do that, I will drive there and watch that. That is, I'm so jealous of you, Jack, actually, for being able to see one of these fly already, that I can't imagine what that had to be like. I mean, just emotions and knots and stomach and then elation, like.
Honestly, it was bittersweet. If you want me to be completely 100% honest with you, it was a little bit bittersweet. Because for a variety of reasons that I don't need to get into all of them, but it was a little bit bittersweet. But I'm glad that I got to see it hop. The wind, that's one of the things. The wind blowing straight at us meant that the vehicle was obscured for like 80% of flight. Or that's probably a gross exaggeration, but still, you get the idea. Didn't catch the legs coming out, didn't catch landing. But really, I'm like not complaining. I really do not mean to come off as, but this is like when you sit in the same place for hours and hours and hours and wait for an event to happen. It's like with IFA. I'm not complaining about in-flight abort and how that went, and the fact that it happened in the cloud from our perspective and we didn't see anything. At least we got to be there and see it launch. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And certainly, I don't mean to compare SN6's hop to in-flight abort. That's very different situations. SN6's hop was amazing, but yeah, just a little bit bittersweet because I didn't get to see 5 hop, and 5's hop was the first thing that I've missed, really. I was out there for the pre-burner of Hopper. I was out there for the static of Hopper and the 20 meter and the 150 meter, and I just couldn't, COVID and everything, I just couldn't make it out for SN5. And I figured if we were really careful, we rented a car and we slept in the car and we only, super minimal contact and constant masking and super social distancing, we'd be able to pull off a trip this time around. And I discussed it with Lauren, and we figured, we figured we could do it safely enough. So, but it was different. We couldn't really hang out with your friends. I mean, I got to see Mary, that was awesome, but we couldn't really hang out. I got to hang out with Gene and Rachel a little bit, but it's like, let's eat outside and sit far away from each other, and like, I don't know, it's bittersweet. And now,
Yeah.
with the judge's order, did I just see something about a judge's order? And they're going to switch to nighttime only testing.
Yes,
So
and that was something I think we just had a question from Space Padre.
yep.
It sounds like they're trying to reopen the beach again, as they start
Yes.
to kind of reopen post-COVID pandemic, and so they're trying to move all of SpaceX tests to nighttime testing now, as I understand it.
Yes,
Yep.
that matches what I saw for the warnings and everything. Well, the warnings and then the notifications that the beach was going to reopen very soon.
Mhm.
Yes.
But I do want to circle back to Jack here.
Sorry, can we just take a moment to say, like, this is a public beach. Like, in a few days, regular, ordinary people will once again be able to drive right past these test sites. I mean, like, literally, where, like, the road is here and the fence is 10 feet this way. Like, it's unreal. Like, to just drive up to it and be like, yeah, I have to pass a background check just to get to a guard gate.
Yeah,
Kennedy.
It's a little different over here on the Space Coast.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's hilarious how lax it is. What were you gonna say, Thomas?
Oh yeah, I wanted to circle back to you because you were talking about you missed SN5, but you were there for SN6, and you were there for the Starhopper hop. Starhopper was this super scaled down, very bottom test section with these weird legs from an earlier version of the Starship vehicle. But so you've now seen the two different types of vehicles do hop tests. Just as an observer there watching it in person, were there any like differences besides the fact that the vehicles themselves are different? Any differences watching those two flights take place?
I wish, honestly, Thomas, you probably know this too, and I'm sure Chris also, because Chris, you've said to the group of us before at launches, hey, every now and then just watch it, like just put the
Mhm.
camera down and watch it.
Yeah.
When something like this is happening, I'm working. Like, this is
Right.
my job. This is what I do for a living at this point, and it happens, and I'm reviewing the footage, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't even catch that in the moment. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
that sort of thing. So with all of these launches, I get my enjoyment from the video footage that everybody shoots, including myself, as much as everybody else. It's insane. I'll sit there and watch my video or watch other people's video over and over and over again because I didn't really get to experience it in the moment, which is a stupid thing to say, but it's kind of true. And I did get to
No, I
experience it
completely
because I
get
was
it, yep.
there and I shot it, and that was my experience. But yeah, so I would have a really hard time like picking apart details between Starhopper and SN6. But the one thing I can say is that being out there for a Starhopper events oftentimes felt like the movie Groundhog's Day, where you would wake up,
Same
especially
thing
staying,
every day.
yeah, especially staying in Boca Chica Village, which I've had the insane honor and privilege to be able to do a few times. Staying in Boca Chica Village is insanely different than staying in Brownsville or South Padre Island. There is just no comparison. It is unlike anything else, and I freaking love it. And basically, it would turn into a Groundhog's Day situation where you wake up, you set everything up, and then it's going tomorrow, or it aborted, or up. So there was a time with Starhopper tests where I was just like, is this ever gonna happen? Is this ever gonna end? And now we've a year and so later, we've progressed to the point where SN6 was just like, okay, done. So that is one thing that I can comment on is the apparent progress in their launch and testing flow. So that's something. I don't know that Raptor was more or less loud this time for me.
The
Just
Raptor
based
engine
on
should theoretically be the same. Maybe some minor incremental improvements between Starhopper and SN6.
see, well, that
No,
was
no,
what
no.
I
Chris
was.
might disagree with me. Hold on.
Yeah, I think I
No,
also
no.
disagree. Go, Chris.
Yeah, no. They put out the same amount of thrust, but they do not necessarily put out the same amount of sound based on atmospheric conditions of the
Oh,
day.
that's true. That's true.
Well,
Because,
also,
and let me just say that Falcon 9 that just launched earlier this week with
Yeah.
Starlink was the loudest freaking launch I have heard. Seen space shuttles launch, bear that in mind. And it was so powerful and strong because there was no wind, about 98% humidity, and really hot temperatures. And those three things just combined together perfectly that it scared people up here in Daytona who thought the
Yeah.
rocket
Yeah,
had exploded. It
with
was
that
so
amount
loud.
of humidity, with that amount of humidity, the sound is basically traveling through like butter or like a solid.
Yeah.
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 But no, yeah, to your point, there's an Atlas launch out here from Vandenberg several years ago before I started shooting as media. That to this day, that launch is the most earth-shattering launch that I've ever experienced. I think it was a NRO launch. I forget off the top of my head. I could look it up. But there was a low cloud layer, but we weren't obscured by fog or clouds or anything. But there was high humidity, and it was one of those situations where I was in a shallow valley, and the sound was reflected off the clouds, off the mountains, back to me, back to the cloud. It was just a constant. It was awesome. So, but what I was going to say about the sound of the Raptor is, and I don't know if this is true or not. It might be. I forget if this was an Elon tweet or what, but I think with Starhopper, the Raptor was basically minimally throttled. It was at minimum throttle the whole time, and I think with these with 5 and 6, they have to throttle it up a little bit more. But I'm not positive about that. But that could lead to an increase in sound. But I am also not a rocket scientist, and I don't know that higher throttle equals more sound. Someone might jump in the comments and be like, "Well, actually, no." So I don't know.
Well, I do have actually one message for you here, Jack. Someone named Mary Boca Chica Gal is in chat saying that there will be plenty more opportunities to stay in Boca Chica Village. Big
Yeah.
shout out to Mary, who is, of course, the one who photographs and video records, whatever the right verb there is. All of the history taking place down in Boca Chica. Mary is there every day recording and taking photos. So big shout out to her. She's in chat hanging out. A couple
Yeah, that's
super
cool.
chats.
That's
Yeah,
cool
go
that we
ahead.
have her in chat. I'm digging that, and it was really good to see you, Mary. And I'm super glad that you got the shots you did, because holy cow, that was awesome. The way the smoke cleared that way. Heck
Yeah.
yeah.
A couple super chats real quick. Rough Rider Show with the super chat. Thank you very much for the support. Jokia with another one. Thank you for your support. And Nick has a super chat and a question, or just says shout out to Mary who's in chat. Again, another big shout out to Mary. So thank you everyone who's throwing their support to help us do what we do here.
Yeah. Now we
We
just
did.
need Scott and Tim in chat, and we'll have the whole gang.
Yeah, right. We've got a couple questions here about SN8. So we were talking about SN5 and SN6, these two basically test tank sections with a mass simulator on top and a single Raptor engine, the new legs that deploy out from underneath. Um, so that's the kind of vehicle configuration they're currently hop testing with. But we're also looking forward to SN7.1, which is a test tank. And then SN8 should be the next full-scale Starship, and that should have a bunch of new features that we haven't seen before. We're looking at 3 Raptor engines instead of just one. So right now they have the one Raptor engine that's kind of offset from the center because they haven't filled out the entire center cluster of Raptor engines. SN8, we're expecting to have 3 engines at that whole center cluster. And then we'll also have the nose cone instead of a mass simulator on top, the complete nose cone, and then all the aerodynamic surfaces that come with that, fins, the canards near the top, and then the main body fins near the bottom. And then maybe, I don't know, are there any other new features we'll see on SN8 for the first time?
I think like chines, the
Mhm.
covers, or I don't know if they switched away from doing the chines. If you don't know what a chine is, think of the SR-71. SR-71
Yeah.
isn't like a smooth tube fuselage like a commercial airliner. It's got kind of like the blended like razor edge, or what, I don't know how else to describe it. But I don't know what the aero properties of 8 are going to be, especially since it's been a while since we've seen an updated render or presentation from Elon, and he's even said on Twitter that it's been tweaked a little bit. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what 8 ends up looking like. And oh my gosh, I mean, seeing the first one with legs or with wings and a nose,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be so surreal. And I think at that point, at that point, people will start to notice what's going on down in South Texas. And by people,
Yeah.
I mean normal people, and I mean like
Right.
mainstream media. I bet, you know, if you're following this kind of thing and your parents or your significant other or your friends come in the room, they're like, why are you watching that grain silo? I bet you after SN8, people will be like, oh, is this that SpaceX thing? Just
Right,
watch for
yeah,
that change.
exactly.
Watch for
Yeah.
that shift. I bet you it happens.
Yeah, the only thing more that I could foresee maybe on SN8 is more of the thermal protection system testing,
Mhm.
and maybe some tweaks to that. But aside from what you said, no, I'm not really expecting anything else for that really. But I
That's a
do
good-
have a
that is a
question
good-
though.
Well, hang on. That's a good answer, though. I just wanted
Yeah.
to compliment your thinking, because we could very, very well see a large sheet of thermal protection on 8 versus a tiny little hexagon or whatever. I mean, we've even seen in some of Mary's insanely awesome videos of that thermal protection assembly area in one of those tents. They've had a giant SpaceX X logo on one of those like 3 or 4 ring stacks, and there's studs corresponding all around that entire X. So they have the capability, and they're seemingly working on getting an entire windward side of a barrel section covered in tiles. So we could see that on 8. That would be super, super, super cool to see. And I think Elon even said on Twitter that they want to test larger sections of tiles.
Yeah, because one of the things to me, and one of the reasons I'm assuming they really do want to test, is once you take off in an orbital configuration where you're relying on that heat shield to bring you back in one piece, you can't be shedding tiles as you're headed uphill. And we know that this was a problem at the beginning of the shuttle program. They solved it, but we also know that the X-37B just basically used shuttle thermal blankets and tiles, right? Customized for itself and the application technology. And the application technology here for the tiles on thermal protection system on Starship are very, very different from what's been used in the past. So yeah, definitely getting that good grounded data, knowing they're not going to fly off in the dense lower atmosphere is good.
I want to break in here real quick because we got to welcome Bob Brink. Welcome to Launch Director. Thank you so much for your support. That's a big time membership. Thank you.
Wow.
All of the support from the super chats and the memberships goes right into improving our content, bringing more stuff from Boca Chica and from Cape Canaveral and things like that. So thank you so much for that big piece of support.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really just want to take a moment and quickly underscore my deep, deep, deep thanks to all of our viewers and all of our members, especially. Without you, I mean, I don't know where it would be right now, but with you, I mean, we're at what, 132 something thousand subscribers. Subscribe if you haven't already. But it's insane. Our growth is insane, and just frickin' wait. Just wait, you guys. We have so much more that we can do with your support. So just wait is all I can say.
A couple quick super chats too. Dougal with the super chat says, thanks Mary and thanks NSF for the gathering of nerds. We are the group of rocket nerds that come to hang out on Saturday afternoons, so we appreciate you coming to join us.
It looks like... Oh, go. It looks like you started working again.
Oh, okay, cool. SN7.1. Why 0.1?
I don't know. Why 7?
Wasn't there previously an SN7 test tank? Isn't that why this is
Sorry.
actually the second SN7?
No, just sorry. I have to compliment Jack on that answer. That was perfect. Like, why 0.1? Why 7? I love that. Like,
does anybody know?
Sorry, that was awesome.
No, I mean, the right answer is what Thomas said, is there was already a SN7, but it begs the question, they did an SN2 test tank, why not 2.1 instead of, like, 7 arguably could have been 2.1, and then 7.1 could be 2.2. This is the hell that we get into with SpaceX naming.
Well, I will put forth my educated guess, is that the distinction between, like, the SN2 test tanks and the SN7 was the new steel alloy, the 304L.
That, and I think 7 also,
which I'm now second
has
guessing.
a thrust puck.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe
that's
so there's changes between
2 is just 2 bulkheads,
tanks.
I think, sort of welded together. So I get it. 7 is closer in terms of a better analog for an actual Starship, so it gets a real Starship serial number or something. But then why not make the same? Okay, so now we're on the other end of the spectrum. Why not make 7.1 9 or 10 or whatever sequentially next?
Yeah.
It's just at some point they're like, this doesn't deserve a real number, when they had previously decided it deserved a real number. So but they're allowed to change their minds. That's perfectly allowable and fine. Yeah, but that's part of the fun we get to have with SpaceX and how they name things. I mean, look at Starlink naming. Look at really anything, any of their naming schemes. Not one of their necessarily strongest suits, but it's their prerogative.
I would need to break in again because we have another big membership, Andre, with the new flight engineer membership. Thank you so much for the support on that. That's incredible.
Oh, thank you. My gosh, thank you. That
The memberships and super chats are rolling in.
My cat, I don't know if you can hear her, but she's screaming in the background her thanks. And also desire for tuna.
Well, I just want to say it takes a lot to make me speechless, but all of your support really does all the time. And I know Thomas just laughed. Thomas knows. He's been in the car with me. It takes a lot to get me to shut up and get me to be speechless. But no, thank you.
It's either YouTube support or Falcon 9 landings that do it,
Oh, well, if it's a Falcon 9 landing, all bets are off. Like there will be screaming. No, but seriously, I say that not to make a joke. I say that to try and impart how much this means to us and how much it means to me and all of us at NSF. That I really don't know what to say aside from thank you, because that feels so inadequate, but it's the only words I can.
Yeah, I think Chris EXE stopped working. Chris.exe reboot. Really though, and just to echo his sentiment, thank you everybody.
Okay, I'm back.
Go.
Up and he's back.
You're good. We can hear you now. Go, Chris. Continue to be thankful.
Yes.
Well, hold on, because we have another one. Peter with the launch director membership. Thank you so much for joining the channel membership. We got another one, guys.
Thank you. That's incredible. Yes, because like what I was saying, like what Jack was saying is it lets us expand. It lets us go after new initiatives, a lot of which we hope to be able to reveal to you very soon with what we've been doing with a lot of this support and money. So stay tuned. We should have some good things coming shortly.
You can even see already a lot of it. We've been able to bring on, and I wanted to do this earlier, so this reminds me, thank you. We've been able to bring on both Theo and Nick, additional editors. So, I mean, I've been editing these videos along with Brady basically nonstop since we forced Chris B to start trying to rest more and start not bandy-camming the videos together. And it's just exploded, and it's been so great because Brady and I have been able to spend more time editing. And then now it's gotten to a point where, if I want to go shoot in Boca Chica, I can go do that, and I'm not the only editor. We can actually have another editor. So it's incredible what we've been able to do. And now, I don't know if you guys remember the weekly videos, but it used to be that I would finish doing a daily video and then start the weekly video. And you may have noticed we haven't done a weekly video in a little while. Well, that's because I was the only editor pretty much. So now that we, with your guys' support, with everybody, all of you viewers and all of our subs and everybody just energizing us so much, now we've got Theo on board and now we've got Nick on board, and they're able to help out here and there, and just onwards, upwards. Thank you everybody so much. And I see some more super chats and stuff coming in. I don't know if you want to run through those, Thomas, but thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with them. We've got Java Man with the $5 super chat. Since the windward side of Starship will be covered in black TBS tiles, do you think the leeward side will be covered with white thermal blankets? Shades of shuttle in Starship's future? What do you think?
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
Well, it would be beautiful. And there was a render, I believe it was the 2008 version of the presentation, where it was all white and black, and it looked like the Planet Express ship from Futurama, which I love. But I believe what Elon has said most recently, someone can correct me if he said something even more recent, because this does happen, and this is one of the true joys. That I'm not being sarcastic. Like honestly.
We got a $100 super chat. I'm sorry for interrupting. We got
Did we?
Wait. Wow. Superport,
oh yeah, right there.
The Superport though says, "I'm back."
You are back. Absolutely. No denying that. Thank you so much for the big old super chat. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes. Wow, to the point that totally derailed. Oh yes.
You broke Chris and Jack again.
Yeah. And then we both do our high-pitched laugh at the same time. I love it. So correct me if Elon has said something more recent, because this does happen, and this is one of the true joys, and I don't mean that sarcastically, I mean that very realistically. It's one of the joys of following the development of the system, is things can change very quickly. But I believe the last thing we saw is that thermal protection system would only be on the windward side of the vehicle, and that the stainless steel and some of the methane that they were looking at in the vehicle would keep the leeward side cool enough that it was not that it would not require thermal protection for reentry and landing.
I think
Yeah,
I agree
speaking
with you. I
of-
think that's what we have.
Speaking of shuttle too, it makes me think. What was that? 51L or one of the? There was a one of the shuttles when it re-entered, or sorry, when it launched, it lost a lot of tiles, like a lot of tiles, and
Oh yeah.
and when it
was-
when it re-entered or whatever, they were. I forget if it was John Young piloting that one or what, but they were a little bit sketchy on coming in, and then when they landed and were looking at it on
Yes.
the runway, there was a patch where there was no tile and there was some serious burn through. But the only reason it hadn't all the way burnt through is because there was a steel plate that had been added on right there for an antenna or something. So all that is to say, I am extremely glad that the substructure of Starship is steel and not brittle,
Yes.
low melting point aluminum. That's a good
Yes.
thing, and that's clearly why they've chosen steel, at least in part, is because it can sustain that higher heating, and therefore you need less thermal protection.
Indeed, and for the
All right,
background
hold
that,
on, guys. I'm gonna interrupt again because we've got another flight engineer, Kevin, with a flight engineer membership. Thank you so
Wow.
much for
Wow.
joining up on the channel membership. That's incredible.
Thanks, Kev.
Thank you.
Kevin K.
Wow.
That's like a double. Your nickname or your initials or KK. I mean, that's pretty legit right there. Thanks, dude.
Thank you. So thank you. Yes, for what you were saying, Jack, yeah, that little piece of steel that was right over one of the antennas for shuttle on an area where like the fuselage and the wing were overlapping on Atlantis was the only thing that saved her during reentry. Yeah, that was a mission where a piece of, ironically, a piece of thermal insulation came off the right-hand solid rocket booster, slammed into Atlantis's right-hand side, thankfully missed the wing leading edge reinforced carbon panels right there. 700 tiles were damaged and several were outright missing, including one that would have caused a burn through if there would not have been that plate directly underneath her.
We've got a little extra help on the back end from shuttle hugger Chris B, because I've got a picture up. It looks like it was STS-27 is actually the mission you're referring to, Jack, and we've got a picture of the tile damage right there.
So just to put that into perspective, that was literally the second shuttle flight after the Challenger disaster.
Yeah.
And an aluminum plate, or not, sorry, a steel plate is what saved Atlantis on that moment, and her crew.
Gotta love the shuttle.
Yep.
So yeah, so what was the original question about? It was about a Starship
thermal protection system on the leeward side.
Yeah.
Yes. But and the answer to which is no. It will not have thermal protection on the leeward side, only the windward side for re-entry.
Sorry for the derail. I'll take full
you're
responsibility for that one. And Ron Smythe in the chat with a $5 super chat saying it was a STS-27 classified DoD flight. Thank you, Ron Smythe. Those are my favorite shuttle missions. Is all the classified DoD ones, because the shuttle, man, it got a big old payload bay and it could do some spooky stuff.
Yeah,
it really could, but it was honestly because of the DoD classification of the mission that they were not allowed to do the inspections that the crew actually wanted to do on the vehicle, and they were only allowed to use the low res camera on the end of the end effector of the robotic arm, which could not see in all the places to know how bad the damage actually was. And there's a good story, and it's not apocryphal, it's true, that if Atlantis, if they were, the commander was ready, that if he was seeing signs of a burn through and that they weren't going to make it, he was ready to open his microphone and make it very public what was happening.
There's some crazy stories.
That's why thermal protection system is important.
Yes.
But also why we're hammering this home is because the steel that they are using has a very, very, very high melting point, right? Which is going to be a huge protection and safeguard, right, for atmospheric reentry operations for Starship. So already you can see, as we love to say, magnitudes of order better than the system that preceded it for reusability and large scale, payloads and stuff like that.
Can you guys hear me still? I had to jiggle some things
Yes.
here.
Yep, we got you.
Okay, cool.
A couple quick super chats really quick. First of all, Michael090 with the Red Team membership. Thank you so much for your support. Steve with the super chat. Thank you. And then we've got, all right, these names that I'm not good at pronouncing. Anti-Archoki or something like that. I hope I got that at least close to correct. These Raptor engines look huge. How will they fit in Starship and Super Heavy? Do we have what's the latest? Because didn't we just get another engine configuration change for Super Heavy, at least initially?
Isn't it
28.
28 now? 28
Yeah,
Raptors
down to
on
28.
Super Heavy? Yeah. But no reduction in overall thrust, because if I remember the tweet from Elon correctly, they can reduce the number of Raptors in the Super Heavy booster because they're actually going to be increasing the thrust and ISP output of the
Yes.
engines to counter. So 28 equals 31, basically.
Yeah. 28 new Raptors equals 31
weird
old Raptors. Yeah.
Yes, in rocket math, 28 equals 31. Yeah.
So yeah, but they'll be clustered in there. They'll still be packed in there pretty tight. We got a super chat here from Rick, the $20 super chat. Elon mentioned maybe taking Starship propellant from 1,200 megatons to 2,000 megatons. Any thoughts? So increasing the propellant mass, is that what I'm understanding that?
I believe so, which I believe was something that he talked about, right? That it's 28 Raptors and, oh gosh, am I remembering that right? Slightly stretched tanks?
No, that's what it was. There was a tank stretch consideration at some point.
Yes. At some
And
point,
yeah,
right?
and
Yeah.
yeah, I think all of this, I mean, you're asking, so our thoughts on this. Personally, it's kind of a natural thing during rocket development for you to tweak the numbers, especially as engine development continues, because the requirements for the Raptor engine will just change as you develop those. And you kind of just stretch and bend the tanks as needed to fit that. To make sure you get the same performance that you need. So it's probably, it's a relatively minor change, I think. And it's just kind of to be expected during normal rocket development.
Indeed.
We just got a Pad Rat membership with Bone. Thank you so much for the support. Go ahead.
I wanted to circle back to the start of that question, though, about or the previous question, actually, about the Raptors and the configurations. Just to note that in case the question wasn't specifically like how many of them are going to be in there, it's also worth noting that some of those 28 will be able to gimbal to correct for thrust vector control and pitching the vehicle and rolling the vehicle and everything. And some of them will be locked, static, no gimbal capability just because of the room considerations in the aft skirt area of the of the Super Heavy booster. But I do not believe that we know, like 28, I'm assuming rings, I'm assuming circular rings for them, but I don't believe we have the exact pattern at which they'll be in there now with the switch from 31 to 28. But that's what we know so far in terms of gimbal, not gimbal, and how close they'll be clustered together, which is very close. But again, so are the 9 on the Falcon 9. So
yeah. I think we'll get a lot more info on this because Elon is in the near future supposed to give another update presentation on Starship development. He has said that hopefully as early as October. He wanted to do it after a Super Heavy prototype completes its first top test, which apparently hardware fabrication for the first Super Heavy booster happened this week. We haven't spotted anything that specifically says Super Heavy yet. There's tons of steel rings everywhere, so it's possible one of them are starting to be for Super Heavy. Of course, we're going to be keeping a lookout for that, but hopefully within the next couple months, we'll have even some more updated renders and updated engine configurations for as the Starship design evolves a bit. So stay tuned for that.
Oh heck! At this point, we might have a Super Heavy prototype in 2 months. At this point, at the rate they're going. And remember, we were talking about this, right? We were specifically talking about when might we see the first Super Heavy booster, and a lot of people were thinking, early next year. And I just remember throwing out like, I don't know. at the rate they go, maybe October, and
Yeah.
maybe I should have played the lottery.
Well, I may hold off on that because the aspirational timeline of October versus
Well,
it actually
yes.
appearing in October are two
Yes.
different things. But we shall see.
Yes.
Really
Yeah,
quick.
But anyway, that does lead to a distinct possibility of a super heavy taking flight or being tested in some way prior to the end of the year, which would be astounding by all regards.
We got a couple quick super chats here. Billy with the $5 super chat, thank you so much. And DYU89 says tuna for Jack's cat. So there you go. Thank you so much, guys, for the support. I want to pivot the conversation a little bit. I mean, we just did a full hour on Starship, but we've got a couple Q questions about some other non-Starship things that I want to get to because there's lots of other interesting things going on. First and foremost, we had a question about the Delta Heavy mission. If you remember, a week ago today, there was a Delta IV Heavy launch attempt that aborted right after engine ignition. Chris, do we have a status on that mission right now?
It's an excellent question, and the answer to that is no, we don't. ULA is per ULA. They are diligently working the issue and understanding what went wrong and turning the vehicle around. Exactly what work that entails, I wish I could tell you. We reached out to Aerojet Rocketdyne, who builds the RS-68A engines for the Delta IV, and they sent the answers to us to ULA, and ULA did not forward them along to us. And we also asked Northrop Grumman about the nozzle engines and what needs, because Northrop Grumman builds the nozzle engines for the RS-68As. And we asked Northrop Grumman, and they said the exact same thing, that they found the answers and they sent them to United Launch Alliance, and ULA did not forward them along to us. So I wish I knew more. I wish I could tell you what needed to be refurbed. I wish I could tell you a timeline. All we know is that it ain't happening in the next 4 days because there's no weather forecast.
Yeah, that's been the big thing we've been watching, is waiting for that to come out. So
yeah. Now, I know ULA said 7 days, but I want to remind everyone that the last time the Delta IV Heavy aborted off the pad after engine start, which was its previous mission,
Yep.
yeah,
I was going to say this has serious
longer than a week.
Yeah,
this has serious shades of NROL 71, which was the last Heavy out of Vandenberg. Gosh, what a beautiful
and the Heavy
launch.
previous to this one. This is two Heavies in a row that have aborted at this point.
Two Heavies in a row. Yep.
Yeah, and that launch was a particular challenge to shoot because it aborted not only for this issue but for several other issues. I think it ultimately ended up scrubbing 4 or 5 times, and that's a 3-hour drive up to Vandenberg for me, and then whatever early morning, 2 a.m. waiting for the launch doesn't happen, then 3 hours drive back. So that was it was also during like Christmas, Thanksgiving time, so I had to be home for family stuff, and then I had to shoot a film in Wyoming in January, and it was like every time I was gone, they would set the next date, and then there would be a delay, and then I would come down for it and thread the needle. It was just, I love ULA and I love Delta Heavy, but to have this issue twice with the vehicle, rapid fire like this, one mission and then again right on the next mission, and to take, I think it might have even been like a month for NROL 71. I think it was about a month turnaround to replace the Rofies or whatever the heck thing that is like that spits off all the sparks that burns off the transient hydrogen. So yeah, it's. I'm trying to, like, if I was ULA, what do you do? It's a conundrum. Do you spend time fixing up Delta Heavy, if it even needs fixing, or what have you, or tweaking the flow or whatever you do, or do you just say Delta Heavy is what it is? It's a locked, fixed, finished product. Let's make sure that Vulcan doesn't have these issues, because there are a couple Heavies left, and hopefully we don't see this sort of delay again.
Yeah, and of course, I would not at all be surprised if this had a knock-on effect, because it was a month, and that's why when they said a week, in my head, something lodged in my head, and I was like, ooh, it's going to be longer than that, because I remember this turnaround from the previous time.
The 7
week
days
might be the
minimum turnaround. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but yeah, it's a valid point, Jack, right? Because the Delta line is not only locked and completed, there are only 5 of them left, including the one that's sitting on the pad right now here at the Cape and the one that's sitting on the pad at Vandenberg later this year. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if we see a knock-on effect to the one at Vandenberg later this year. I think that was like November right now or something like that.
Yeah, no earlier than November. Yep.
Yeah, so I'd expect a knock-on effect from that, and I don't know. At this point, just because ULA really hasn't said anything, and Aerojet and Northrop are both sending the answers to them and not to us for something that they themselves built, I have an odd feeling that this is not going to go anytime soon. That's my feeling. Take with that what you will. Yeah.
Well, me and Chris at least are eagerly waiting because we're ready to head back down and cover it live when it does go. But until then, we'll be maybe if it delays long enough, the launch window will shift long enough that it's a more normal launch window. We'll see.
Oh, true.
It was
true,
shifting forward like 4 minutes a day, right? So we just got to delay like several weeks and we're good.
Yeah, do that math. Like
it'll be a bit. But a somewhat related question for the other operational heavy lift vehicle. Martin Smith wants to know what the next Falcon Heavy mission is. I believe that is USSF 44. Did I get the number right?
It's what we. Oh, is it 44? No, NR. Wait.
I'm googling it. Hold on.
Oh God, yes. Well, because there's NROL.
It is 44. Okay,
thank
you, Michael.
Yeah. But there's no reason that. Yeah. No, you said that, and literally I went, wait, no, that's the one on the pad with the Delta. Wait, no, that's NRO. Not
that's
like,
weird.
Yeah, that's where my mind went with the 44. Yeah.
Right. The current Delta mission is NROL 44. The next Falcon Heavy is USSF 44. That's weird.
Yes.
But yeah, that is launching no earlier than later this year currently. We haven't had an update for a little bit. So that's not like a super firm target, but it could theoretically happen around the end of this year. But that's the next Falcon Heavy mission. Its first like true DoD mission, because you kind of don't count the STP-2 mission. It's technically a DoD mission, but it wasn't awarded via the National Security Space Launch Program or something like that. So it's a little different.
Well, and it was the final flight of the Falcon Heavy that was needed in order to certify it for the direct to geostationary insertion. To be fair, Falcon Heavy was certified with its demo flight and Arabsat 6A successes to fly DoD and national security missions, because it only requires 2 successful flights, which is standard across how the DoD works. But then they also had to certify it for direct geostationary orbit insertion capabilities. And that's what STP-2 ended up becoming, because STP-2 and Arabsat 6A swap launch locations in the manifest. So that's how Heavy got certified for everything. Yeah.
Really quick, Dan Price, welcome to Capcom. Appreciate the support there for the new membership. Let's talk about, we got a question. Barn wants us to talk about the new Rocket Lab announcement, and I totally agree. So that's another big piece of news that came out this week. So Rocket Lab, well, first of all, Rocket Lab returning to flight for the first time since the Flight 13, which did not go according to plan, a failure during Stage 2 flight. Flight 14 went off without a hitch and went well, deploying a satellite for Capella Space into low Earth orbit. And that mission we thought was a fairly simple one satellite deployed into orbit, all is well. And then yesterday, Rocket Lab came out with or was it yesterday? Was it yesterday or Thursday? I think it was Thursday. This week.
Every day Starship hopped, because I was on the Starship stream while you were listening to the Rocket Lab.
Yes, Thursday. Yes. So a couple of days ago, Rocket Lab comes out and said, we have some news. And it was actually earlier this week that came out, we have some news, and didn't say anything else. And sometimes companies will give us media a press release in advance that we just can't publish until a certain day. They didn't even do that. They said, nope, you have to tune in on Thursday and find out. And so on Thursday, I called into the Rocket Lab media event and found out that they have actually debuted their Photon satellite for the very first time. I'm going to show a picture of it now. It is basically their Electron kickstage that they've been using for several missions now in order to deploy their payloads into very precise and very specific orbits. And they have modified that spacecraft with a couple extra systems, things like new electrical systems, new attitude control systems, and things like that. And they have now turned it into a satellite bus that customers can now come to Rocket Lab, ask about a specific payload or like an instrument that they want to put on board, and they'll say, okay, we'll just put it on this Photon satellite, and we can fly it to space for you. So it's this new sort of end-to-end service that Rocket Lab is offering, and I think we have. Let's see. I'm trying to find. They posted some video from orbit. Here it is, I think.
Satellites as a service, right? Like you can,
Yes.
instead of having to design the bus or go to somebody for a bus or do any of that kind of stuff, you can just go to Rocket Lab and say, hey, we want to fly a blank, and they say, okay. It needs to do it needs to be
Yeah.
like this, it needs to be this size and this weight, and then you can just package it up, send it off to Rocket Lab, and they get it done for you. I mean, how cool is that they have their own satellite bus now? And that's like a nice little bit of, what was that? Does that count as vertical integration? I don't know.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
different
Yeah,
vertical
yeah.
integration, but yes.
Yes, that was a wonderful wordplay there, Jack. I very much appreciated. Well, yeah, and I mean, like, let's just think about this from a cost perspective, right? I mean, Rocket Lab doesn't really talk about costs. We know that, but we do know that a basic electron costs $6 million for the launch. Well, that includes the Curie kick stage. So assume if you want to use that kick stage for something slightly different, that the price goes up just a little bit there. I mean, even on my gosh, even on a liberal swing on that for price, we're what? For $10 million, you get a satellite bus, a satellite, and a rocket to get you to orbit. That's freaking incredible for the
That's a great deal.
satellite industry. Yeah. Yeah.
So yes,
I mean,
that was
especially
that
with the
was big
satellite bus
news.
already built, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because that was part of what he said, right? Is these things are already built, they're already designed. So, I mean, I don't think he gave a specific timeline. So I'm just kind of throwing something out there to show the timeline difference. Where, like, if someone goes for these big geostationary satellites, those can take 3 or 4 years to build before they're ready for liftoff. This could be 5, 6, 7 months. I mean, from going to them and saying, this is what we want to do, to getting on the rocket and lifting off.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, in the olden days, in the before times, if you wanted a website, you had to have your own server, or if you wanted your own, web store, you had to have your own infrastructure and all that. And now there's something like Squarespace or Amazon Web Services or what have you, where you can just go and there's already payment processing hooked up. You don't have to build any of that. You can go and there's already a GUI for implementing whatever kind of menu system you want. It's all what you see is what you get. Click and drag and drop, and just boom, 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 nice and easy. Versus typing out HTML code or whatever smart programming computery people type do. So all that is to say, it's a lot easier. It's more of a turnkey type situation where you as somebody who wants to operate a satellite, there's much less on your plate now. And like you're saying, Chris, it would hopefully enable much more rapid development and ultimately flight of satellites on behalf of customers, which is super cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I just want to stop for a second to think about the possibilities here, right? Because they've really been talking about Venus, right? And the mission to Venus that they want to do. And what this sort of clicked in my head finally of what Photon is, right, is not just a satellite bus. It's a way to very, very low cost potentially get to some of the planets that have been overlooked. Not because we haven't wanted to go there, but because you have a finite amount of resources and a large number of missions. This could be a true game changer in terms of close by interplanetary exploration.
You're gonna make me cry, Chris. I'm gonna start thinking about getting some cool signs from Venus, and I'm gonna start crying. So that's awesome.
Right?
Well, we should talk about this because I had the opportunity to talk to Peter Beck about this during the media event. And so the main thing, and I don't think the graphic we kind of have up right now, is they're going to use this Photon satellite bus to carry the capstone payload for NASA to lunar orbit. In fact, a near rectilinear halo orbit that Lunar Gateway will use. And they're going to do all sorts of testing to make sure that that orbit is right what they want to be for Artemis program. But also, Peter Beck has personally expressed some interest into launching a mission to Venus, not for an external customer, but as a privately funded, mostly by Rocket Lab venture, to do a fully privately funded science mission to Venus. And we were talking about this, and he said, I have no doubt that humans are going to set foot on the red planet on Mars in the not too distant future, and that's wonderful. and a lot of our resources currently go towards that. There's tons of NASA missions to Mars and things like that. But Venus is very personally intriguing to Peter, and he said, so why don't we privately fund a Venus science mission? We have the capability. We have an Electron rocket, which in combination with this Photon satellite can get payloads to interplanetary trajectories. And he wants to go that route. So that sounds like a very strong passion for Peter Beck, which should be a very strong factor in getting that mission done. He wants to launch it in 2023, so got a couple years to work on it. He says that Rocket Lab is currently assembling a team of scientists to figure out, what kind of instruments should we put on board, things like that. And so hopefully we could see that happen very, very soon. And that's something that's definitely exciting because it's been a while since we've had a scientific mission to Venus. And it's a tough journey. He says that it's not just going to, orbit Venus. It's going to actually go into the atmosphere and do science on the way down as long as it can survive, which is
Wow.
super interesting because the Venusian atmosphere, did I say that right?
Sure.
Venus's
Yes.
atmosphere is very harsh. It's toxic. It's high pressure. It's high temperature, and all of that is not great for spacecraft. So, but that could be very exciting if it's successful.
And that's part of the
It
reason
could
why
be,
Venus is so intriguing too, is because
Mhm.
that dense, super dense atmosphere obscures so much of what we can see, but also it's tantalizing. I mean, the atmosphere is so dense, like humans with like wing attachments on their arms could theoretically like flap their arms and like actually maintain some sort of locomotion a little bit. Like it's crazy. It's one of those types of planets where seemingly the normal laws that we're used to of nature don't apply, and they do apply because it's physics. But it's odd and different compared to what we're used to. And whereas Mars is sort of like
Mhm.
a desert planet in a lot of ways, and it's like, okay, yeah, I know what a desert is. I've seen Roadrunner and Coyote. But yeah, Venus is just completely it's the definition of otherworldly, and I would be
Yeah.
so happy to see missions headed there. And also, just this made me think, because if Rocket Lab can do it privately funded by themselves, why can't us science nerds like kickstart a Rocket Lab mission?
Right.
Like if it's
Yes,
only
exactly.
if it's only $10 million or whatever, like you see the stupidest things on Kickstarter get like $30 million for like a cheese wedge that
Yeah.
cuts your cheese wedges into tinier cheese wedges or something. Like, I don't know. Like, let's go to space. Let's do some science. Come on.
well, and especially just, I mean, not just for our own personal science, and as we start to expand outward from Earth in permanent ways, which, oh my God, that's a sentence I can actually say, is, you hear astrophysicists and you hear people who study exoplanets and exosolar systems. You hear them all the time talk about, these weirdly bizarre setups and exotic planets that are out there, and you hear them talk about, like, well, it's in the habitable zone, but we don't know if it's, and we know it's terrestrial, but we don't know if it's actually habitable. And a lot of times I'm just sitting here screaming, we have all three of the major examples right here in our
Right.
solar system. We have Venus, which is just slightly too close, and something cataclysmic to it happened early on, but we're not entirely sure what. We have Earth, which survived despite some things that we tried to do to it. And then we have Mars, which is potentially the closest of the three, of Venus and Mars, is the closest analog to Earth. And of course, we focused on it because it's the easiest one to go to and survive to out of the two. But we spent so much time and energy understanding how Mars lost its water and how its magnetic properties died over the millions of years. And I'm sitting here going, Venus, like this could really help us understand some of the other solar systems that we're seeing out there. And Jack, I'm with you. Like, to me, Venus is by far the most fascinating of the planets of our solar system to me. And I wish we would go there more often.
You kind of just made me sort of realize, like, if I was going to design a solar system so that the beings that that evolved in that solar system had like the nice little stepping stones, like, well, first you go to this one, and it's like basically our solar system. And I know Kerbal is modeled after our solar system, but our solar system is like Kerbal in the sense that, like, you couldn't have designed it better for, here's how you learn to do this step. Then you learn how to do this step. And then you go over to the super Earths over on the gas giants and the moons. You know what I mean? Like, then you go, oh, you want to get the really hard one? Go over to Pluto. It's not on the plane, and it's super way up there. Like that's the super hard level. Like I think we've got it all, and it's just a matter of we don't have all the resources, or really, honestly, we have the resources. We don't have the will as a people. The case has not been effectively made. Otherwise, we'd be doing it. But hopefully, over time, with Rocket Lab doing things like the Venetian mission and things like Photon and just the access to the solar system opening up, we'll see more stuff like this and more people will get excited, because Mars absolutely is awesome, but it shouldn't take up the entire spotlight.
And
No,
Rocket Lab
it should not be the end all be all.
Yeah, Rocket Lab specified during the reveal of hey, we flew our first Photon satellite. This thing doesn't have to launch on Electron. It can launch on any launch vehicle. So if you're concerned about, Rocket Lab was designed as a small sat launcher. It can launch all of these small satellites to low Earth orbit. But if you want to go farther, you kind of have to limit your payload a little bit. Rocket Lab said, well, if you want to use our satellite but need to bring more with you on board that satellite than Electron can handle, that's fine. We'll sell you a satellite. We'll help you build the satellite, and you can launch it on whatever rocket you need. So this doesn't just enable small payload missions to interplanetary trajectories. This will help make any of these satellites easier and cheaper more affordable to build, regardless of what rocket you need to get it to where it's actually going. So there's a lot of potential there. And I do want to address a quick question here. We had a couple questions here about the propellant that the Curie engine on the kick stage uses, the same also on Photon. That is some sort of green propellant that Rocket Lab has said, meaning like environmentally friendly. So not like a super toxic propellant or anything like that. However, we don't know any more than that. It's super proprietary, and Rocket Lab hasn't talked about it. So unfortunately, I do not know the answer to what propellant they use on that. Rocket Lab has not shared that. But I want to move on because we've got some other news that I want to get through the end of the week. First of all, we had Arianespace, another return to flight mission. Vega returned to flight this week, yeah?
We lost Chris again.
We lost Chris. I was setting him up to go off. Oh, nope, he's back. He's good. He keeps hiccuping every couple seconds, but he's back. I was just talking about Arianespace also had their own return to flight mission this week with the Vega rocket, and that launched 53 satellites at once into sun-synchronous orbit, and that was a largely successful mission. So congrats to Arianespace coming back. Yeah. Oh, we do not have Chris's audio on stream. We can hear Chris, but he's not online for stream to hear him. Okay, we're working on it. But I'll pull up the replay here. And yeah, so basically the overall concept of this mission, this was actually a proof of concept mission for this new small spacecraft management program where they're launching 53 satellites at once. And Chris is back. So Chris, tell us about this mission that Vega launched this week.
Oh, he's frozen.
Or is he not back?
He's frozen.
All right. I'll keep talking. So basically 53 satellites from I think 11 different countries, or 13 depending on how you count it. And Chris is back now. We see Chris. He's here. Chris, make sure you can we hear you? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Would you like to talk about the Vega return to flight mission?
Sure, the thing that we had planned eventually. Originally, yes. Yeah, this was really good to see because it's very much worth noting that Vega itself was actually ready to return to flight in March of this year. And then it was delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then they came back in late spring, and they were battling a pretty severe upper level winds. And then the upper level wind pattern over that area of northern South America is really not conducive for Vega to launch over a 3-month period in the summer. So they ended up having to delay until August, and then of all things, a freaking typhoon near a South Korean tracking station got them. So the rocket was technically ready in March, and the rocket was not the one that gave them the problems on this particular campaign. But it was very good to see them return to flight. They had traced the issue to a failure of the forward dome of the second stage during that flight in July of 2019. They traced it to not enough thermal protection system, which allowed a hot gas penetration breach, which then led to the destruction of the second stage and the breakup of the third, fourth, and payloads as well shortly thereafter. So it was really good to see Beyer return to flight for this particular mission. And this one is a really cool one because it's something that we're seeing a lot of large companies transition to, like Roscosmos and Arianespace and SpaceX as well, for these dedicated rideshare missions for smaller satellites that need to get into dedicated orbits that don't necessarily match where the larger satellites they can hitch a ride to are going to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the first of those multiple payload ride shares that have actually launched, because we haven't seen SpaceX's first one yet, and Roscosmos's we haven't seen yet either. Roscosmos had and SpaceX have obviously launched the Starlinks and the OneWeb satellites. But
SpaceX did do a launch for spaceflight. They did SSOA from Vandenberg with
SSOA,
60.
I think.
Oh,
would
that's
count
right,
under that.
SSOA.
So,
yes.
So there was one mission from Vandenberg on a Falcon 9, that was, again, that wasn't organized by SpaceX. It was organized by Spaceflight Incorporated, who bought a Falcon 9 to launch the mission. But yeah, most of the rideshare missions have been at least one primary payload with a bunch of secondary payloads. So we've launched, dozens of satellites at once before, but it's almost up. And Jack is pointing out the mission patch behind him. So this is one of the first missions of this type, and I think the first for Arianespace.
But the SpaceX provided ones have not launched, correct? Because
correct.
This was one of the Ariane provided ones, the proof of concept for those, if I'm not mistaken. Right, and it's the first of those from the companies themselves that have launched, but not the first ride share of SpaceX.
Got it.
Because obviously Rocket Lab is just a small satellite ride share. So
what's the first stage on Vega? Is that a solid?
It is. The first
they're
three
all
stages are
all solid
solids.
except for the final fourth stage. Yep.
Which I love the final four. I love the fourth stage's name, Avoom. It's just like that. I don't know why that just conveys everything I need to know about the stage. I don't know why, but I love that name, Avoom. But yeah, it's the only fuel stage.
I'm going to make a transition here, because the first SpaceX dedicated rideshare mission might be the next polar mission from Florida, but we just had the first one, SAOCOM 1B.
Can I just request?
Oh, and now we're going to make Jack mad.
Can I just please request that when I'm on for NSF Live, we don't say the words polar mission from Florida? Please? It makes me sick. Gross. Anyways.
But we saw the first polar launch from Cape Canaveral here, the SAOCOM 1B mission.
What did I just say?
well, we had to talk about it, Jack. Listen.
Okay.
There will be. I'll
Jack,
talk about Vandenberg missions in a second.
Well, how's this, Jack? We had a Falcon 9 that pitched south.
There you go. Okay, deal.
Okay.
So this Falcon 9 pitched south instead of east from Florida, and it launched the SAOCOM 1B mission, which is a follow-on to SAOCOM 1A, which launched from Vandenberg. But SpaceX wanted to go into these north to south orbits from Florida again to try and increase their launch cadence to those orbits, both from Vandenberg and Florida. So we saw the first one of those missions this week. Me and Chris were down there at the Cape, and Jack's just going to be there giving his thumbs down because he wants more launches from Vandenberg. There is a launch from Vandenberg coming up. Sentinel 6A will still go into polar orbit from Vandenberg. That's a NASA mission coming up. So they're not abandoning Vandenberg, luckily for Jack, but they are going to do some of them from Florida now. And this mission was incredible to see in person, because not only did it launch seemingly the wrong direction from what we normally get, but it also came back and landed at landing zone 1, which was awesome.
Yes. No.
Did it basically overfly you guys?
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
It looked like it, at least. Yeah.
The most bizarre element for this to me was not the trajectory it went out on. It was literally standing 50 feet from the blast danger zone boundary in case it exploded, and that's where they thought the debris would make it. And then you're only 50 feet further away, and it's like, okay, you good Falcon 9. No, it really did appear to go directly overhead of us. Now, it didn't, right? But that was the other very weird thing. was that, and in fact, it was so directly overhead of us, I could not tilt our camera on the causeway back enough to keep it in the field of view as it went up. For those of you who have seen a return to launch site landing before, and you have seen that entry bird that looks like it's directly overhead of you, negative. Negative. It is not, and I understand that now. No, you want to see directly overhead. Stand on the NASA Causeway Site B when one of those things launches from Site 40. But yeah, no, it was incredible. You know, we beat the weather because there was a weather constraint. It was a 60% no-go chance, and it went and landed, and it was absolutely gorgeous. The only thing I would have changed, if I had one thing to change, is I would have gotten rid of the clouds, because while the background of that image is wonderful and remarkable, the fact that it was about 30 minutes prior to sundown, that booster would have been glowing orange and red in the upper atmosphere, and you would have been able to see it with the naked eye, the whole up, back, and down. That's the only thing I would have changed about it. But the clouds provided some epic photographs for it, and background as well.
That's the one that-
epic. Yep.
That's the one that Julia got the crazy reflection of, right? That's the same launch, right?
No,
Oh,
so
no,
I
that
was
was
going to
Starlink,
transition that.
yeah.
So first of all, I was saying the photos I'm bringing up right now are by Julia Bergeron, NASA Spaceflight photographer, and they were incredible. This is the Salcom 1B mission, but the photo that Jack is talking about is from the other SpaceX launch that just happened, the Starlink mission from Pad 39A. And yeah, they got that super awesome reflection over at
She nailed
Playa
it.
Linda. That was awesome.
That is a shot of a lifetime right there. Like that,
Yeah.
the conditions to make that exact shot happen, who knows when they'll happen again. And it could be the next launch, and it could be a launch 20 years from now. So that is the kind of shot where, and I can't speak for Julia, I really can't. But as a photographer, I know that a lot of times I'll take a photo I'm very pleased with, but in my head there'll be a little gremlin like, yeah, but I wish this was a little different. This is the kind of photo, and again, I don't want to speak for Julia, but as a viewer of this content, this is the kind of photo where if I had made this image, there would be no voice in my head that was like, well, if it would, no, flawless. It's flawless. Just call it a day. Put the camera away, drink a beer or whatever, have a soda, whatever beverage you prefer. Call it a day, because you did good. You did a great job. So I'm super glad Julia got that. And there was a bunch of other photographers out there at Playa Linda too that got a similar shot. What an awesome launch. What great conditions.
It was. I mean, it was incredible, because no wind and glass water conditions, are almost unheard of here, because of the wind and the breeze that we get. I mean, it was just incredible.
Yep. Oh, and look at that. We've got the Falcon 9 going transonic right there with the vapor
another
cone
great
around
photo
the
from
fairing.
Julia. I mean, it was just amazing.
Yep.
We're going to have to wrap things up here because I've noticed that we are actually a little bit over on time. There was so much to talk about and so many great questions. I know we didn't get to all of them. So if you have a question that we did not get to answer during the show, please send it to us on social media. We have our Twitter handles right below on the screen here. You can follow Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor for NASA. Oh, I pointed at Jack when I did that. I'm not doing the reverse thing. Chris is over here. Chris is the Assistant Managing Editor for NASASpaceflight. You can follow him at ChrisG_NSF. My name is Thomas Burghardt, TGMetsFan98 on Twitter. I am an editor and writer for NASA Spaceflight. And we've got Jack Beyer, the photographer, one of the photographers for NASA Spaceflight, and video editor and webcast host and everything that Jack does. You can follow him at the Jack Beyer. If you have questions that we did not get to answer during the show, please send them to us on Twitter. We'd love to answer questions after the show over there, so please do so. Another big thank you for everyone who sent in memberships and super chats during the show. We had a whole bunch of them today, and that's the kind of stuff that allows us to do what we like to do. Here are our updated list of new launch directors and flight engineers, our top supporters through the YouTube membership program. Again, it's people like these that allow us to do what we do. So thank you so much for everyone on screen, everyone who turns in super chats and other memberships, and everyone who just tunes in to these shows. We greatly appreciate each and every one of y'all's support. But that is going to do it for this week. week's episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. Thank you to Chris and Jack for joining me today. And a big thank you to Michael Baylor in the background. I almost just combined Michael and Jack's names. I'm sorry, Michael. Michael Baylor in the background doing the production of the overlay and all the graphics you see behind the scenes. Thank you to him for all of his help today. And yeah, Chris and Jack, thanks for joining me.
Always
no problem.
a pleasure.
All right, thank you everyone for tuning in for this week. We will see you during the next live event, which, if I had to guess, something will happen in Boca Chica at some point. We've got SN7.1 testing coming up. Maybe there'll be some live coverage of that. If anything exciting happens at Boca Chica, we're live for it. And then we'll also be keeping an eye out for the next Delta IV Heavy launch attempt, whenever that may be, and any other live launches and things like that. So stay tuned. If you haven't already, subscribe to NASA Spaceflight on YouTube. Click the little bell so you get notified when we go live. And stay tuned for more live coverage, more daily videos from Boca Chica and all of that. And of course, more NASA Spaceflight Live. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roll with planet. Water towers fly! Flight downside, FP off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.